You're fired. Those two words hit me at 3:17 p.m. on a Tuesday, right as I was routing Flight 284 around a thunderstorm that could have killed 180 people. Madison Pierce, 29 years old, Stanford MBA owner's daughter, was firing me. Russell Garrett, 48, former Air Force, 14 years keeping her daddy's planes in the sky. Effective immediately, she added, like I was some intern who'd spilled coffee on her tablet. I looked at her, then at the screen showing that 737 threading between storm clouds over Atlanta. You sure about the timing on this, Madison? But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and tell you how we got here, because this story starts way before that moment in the HR office. It starts with understanding what keeping people alive at 35,000 feet actually looks like. You know what the heartbeat of a mid-sized airline really is? It's not those glossy ads with flight attendants and perfect smiles. It's not the shiny jets sitting pretty on the tarmac. No, it's a windowless bunker in Queens that smells like burnt coffee, stress sweat, and the metallic taste of impending disaster. It looks like me, staring at banks of monitors at 4 a.m., nursing coffee that could strip paint, making sure planes don't turn into lawn darts. I'm Russell Garrett, and for 14 years, I was operations director at Skylink Regional Airlines. Before that, I spent 8 years in the Air Force managing logistics for cargo planes that carried everything from medical supplies to stuff I can't talk about. The military taught me something important. In aviation, details matter. One missed detail means body bags. My job was simple in theory, impossible in practice. Take the logistical nightmare of flying metal tubes full of people across the country and make sure they don't crash into each other, run out of fuel, or get stuck circling airports until passengers revolt. I was the invisible hand keeping chaos at bay. Our system was called Flight Ops Pro. Sounds modern, right? Wrong. It was a digital Frankenstein built in the late 90s, held together with custom code patches I'd written over the years. Treat it right, feed it correct data, and it purrs. Look at it wrong, and it'll ground your entire fleet faster than an FAA safety violation. That particular Tuesday started like every other Tuesday for the past decade. I walked into the operations control center, servers humming like angry wasps. The carpet was that industrial gray that was probably beige when Reagan was president. I sat at my command station, really just a Herman Miller chair I'd liberated from the executive floor during their last renovation. "Morning, sunshine," grunted Danny, my shift supervisor. Danny looked like a walrus in a polo shirt. He was eating a breakfast sandwich that smelled like regret and bad decisions. "Don't start with me, Danny," I said, logging in. The screen flickered green. My reflection looked back at me. A guy who'd seen too many 4 a.m. shifts with gray creeping into his hair and lines around his eyes that came from squinting at screens in dim light. "How's the Northeast Corridor looking?" "Screwed," Danny mumbled through his sandwich. "Storm system in the Carolinas. Boston's already delaying ground operations, and we've got warning lights on the backup server." "Tuesday server lag," I said, cracking my knuckles. "I'll bypass the handshake protocol. Keep the crews on standby." My fingers knew these keyboards better than they knew my wife's touch. Sad truth, but that's the life, you know? You trade personal time for uptime, trade family dinners for flight schedules that actually work. Within 10 minutes, I'd rerouted 3 flights around Charlotte, sweet-talked a gate agent in Newark into overtime, and patched the server lag before the automated system could trigger a fleet-wide panic. Warning lights went green. Beautiful, calming green. Look, people think planes run on jet fuel. They don't. They run on the stubborn refusal of people like me to let the universe win. The universe wants chaos. Weather delays, mechanical failures, pilots calling in sick with mysterious ailments right before their ex-wife's wedding. I was the wall against that chaos. I was feeling good that morning, feeling like I had this job figured out after all these years. I had my terrible coffee, my green screens, and the illusion that experience actually mattered in this business. But you know what they say about illusions. They usually get shattered by people wearing expensive suits and carrying tablets they don't know how to use. At 9 a.m. sharp, the OCC door opened. Usually nobody comes down here unless something's on fire or someone's getting canned. The air pressure actually changed. The smell of burnt coffee was replaced by aggressive perfume and entitlement walking through the door. Standing there, looking like they'd wandered off a reality show about people who've never changed their own oil, were Madison and Brady Pierce. Madison was the owner's daughter, 29, Stanford MBA, possessed the kind of confidence that comes from never facing real consequences. Brady was her 26-year-old brother, looked like he'd stepped out of a men's fashion magazine and had the business sense of a golden retriever. Madison held her tablet like it contained the secrets of the universe. Brady was already taking selfies with the server banks in the background, probably for his Instagram story. "Russell," Madison announced, flashing a smile that was all veneers and zero warmth. "Just the person we wanted to see." My gut dropped. Same feeling you get when you hear that grinding noise in your transmission on a dark highway miles from civilization. I knew whatever came next wasn't going to be good. "Madison," I said, not standing up, "what brings you to the dungeon?" "We're here to observe," Brady chimed in, his voice carrying that particular pitch of someone who's never been told no. "Dad thinks it's time we really understood the core operations." "Understood," I repeated. "Right now, I'm routing a 737 around the thunderstorm over Atlanta so 180 people don't become a crater. Feel free to observe, just don't touch anything." Madison laughed, the kind of laugh that doesn't reach your eyes. "Always so dramatic, Russell, that military mindset. But we're thinking bigger picture here. Optimization, streamlining. There's that word, streamlining. Corporate speak for fire the people who know what they're doing and replace them with an app that doesn't work." Brady wandered over to my monitor bank, reaching out toward the screen showing live flight data. "Don't," I said sharply. He froze. "That's not a touchscreen, kid. That's a live feed. You tap that wrong, you might cancel fuel orders for 3 airports. He pulled his hand back, but I saw the flash of anger. Rich kids hate being told they can't have something. "Meeting," Madison said, checking her Apple Watch. "Noon. Boardroom. We need to discuss the future. I'm busy keeping the present alive." "It wasn't a request, Russell." They turned and left, trailing their cloud of expensive cologne and bad decisions. The door clicked shut. The silence that followed felt heavy. Danny looked at me over his breakfast sandwich. That felt ominous. "Yeah," I said, turning back to my screens. "Better update your LinkedIn." I didn't know it then, but I was right. The storm in the Carolinas was nothing compared to the disaster that had just walked out my door. The boardroom at noon was like walking into an execution chamber disguised as a conference room. All glass, overlooking the hangar where real people did real work while suits sipped sparkling water and made decisions about their lives. Cruel architecture, if you ask me. Old Howard Pierce wasn't there. First red flag. Howard built this airline with 1 Cessna and questionable loans in the 1970s. He drank scotch at 10 a.m. and respected people who got their hands dirty. If Howard was missing, it meant the inmates were running the asylum. Madison sat at the head of the table like she was judging a talent contest. Brady slouched next to her typing on his phone, probably live streaming this moment to his followers. The rest of the table was filled with middle management, people with mortgages and kids in college, currently calculating how long their savings would last. "Okay, team, let's pivot," Madison announced as I sat down. She didn't even look up. "We've been analyzing the metrics with Brady's fresh insights." Brady's insights. This is a kid whose last real job was running his fraternity's social media account. "So," Brady said, standing up and dimming the lights. A PowerPoint projected onto the wall. The first slide said, "Digital transformation" in neon blue font. I wish I was making this up. "We feel that operations is too reactive," Madison continued, gesturing like she was conducting an orchestra. "Always putting out fires. We want to be proactive. Use AI to predict problems before they happen." "That's called weather forecasting," I said from the back. "We already do that." "It's on Channel 7. A few nervous chuckles from the accounting department. Madison glared at me. "Funny, Russell, but we're talking about structural optimization." She clicked to the next slide. It showed our hub map with red X's marked over various routes. "Why do we have so many redundant flights to Buffalo? Seems wasteful. The algorithm says we can cut 40% of those flights and use larger planes." I leaned forward. The anger was starting to bubble up, hot and familiar. "Madison, we fly CRJ-200s to Buffalo because their secondary runway can't handle the weight of 737s. You consolidate to big planes, you have to use the main hub, which has landing fees 3 times higher. You'll lose $1.2 million a month in fees alone. Plus, those flights are for business commuters. They need frequency, not capacity." Silence, the kind where you can hear the HVAC system wheezing. Madison blinked, looked at Brady. Brady looked at his phone. "Well," Madison said, clearing her throat, "that's exactly the kind of legacy thinking we need to disrupt. We can negotiate those fees." "You're going to negotiate with the Port Authority? What's your leverage?" A strongly worded email? Enough. Madison's voice went cold. The point is, operations is bloated. Too many people monitoring systems that should be automated. We're paying for expertise we don't need anymore. She looked directly at me. We're implementing a new dashboard, Salesforce integration. Anyone can run operations with the right visualization tools. There it was. They looked at me, a 48-year-old former Air Force officer in a company polo smelling like stale coffee, and saw a relic. They saw someone standing between them and their vision of a sleek, automated future. They couldn't fire me for being competent, so they decided competence was obsolete. 2 weeks later, the transformation began in earnest. They fired Murphy, our maintenance scheduler. Murphy had a limp from Vietnam and attitude problems, but he could track parts inventory in his head. They replaced him with a scheduling bot that immediately ordered 200 toilet seats and 0 brake pads. They cut the night shift help desk. Nobody flies at 3 a.m., Brady argued, except for the cargo flights that generate 25% of our revenue. But what do I know? I'm just legacy thinking. I tried to fight it, I sent emails with data. I printed reports highlighting the risks in bright yellow marker so even they couldn't miss it. The response from Madison was always the same. Thanks for the feedback, Russell. Let's stay positive and trust the process. With a smiley face emoji. That passive-aggressive yellow circle felt like being slapped with a wet fish. Brady started shadowing me after that. He'd sit in my office scrolling TikTok, occasionally looking up to ask questions that made my eye twitch. Why are there so many codes? Can't we just use colors? Green for on time, red for delayed? Because, Brady, I said, typing furiously, the codes tell us why it's delayed. Mechanical crew, weather, or act of God. A red dot doesn't tell me whether I need a mechanic or a chaplain. You're so negative, man. Really harsh vibes. It's affecting team morale. Team morale. The team was terrified. People walked around like they were navigating a minefield. The break room, once loud with war stories and friendly betting on arrival times, was now silent as a morgue. I went home that Friday and had a beer on my porch, watching planes climb out of LaGuardia. My wife Sarah came out, still in her nursing scrubs after a double shift at Queens General. Bad day? She asked, settling into the chair next to me. They're coming for me next, honey. I can feel it. Then let them come, she said simply. You've given them 14 years. If they can't see what you're worth, that's their problem. I felt dirty, not the honest dirt of hard work, but the slimy spiritual grime of watching something you built get torn apart by children with credit cards and business degrees they probably bought online. Monday morning, I made a decision. If they wanted to drive the car, I'd let them. But first, I was going to remove the engine. There's a specific calm that settles over you when you decide to stop fighting the inevitable. It's not peace exactly, more like the eye of a hurricane. You know destruction is coming, but for this moment, everything is still. I stopped arguing. That was the first sign, but they were too busy congratulating themselves to notice. We're cutting turnaround time in Dallas to 18 minutes, Madison announced in Monday's meeting, waiting for pushback. Old Russell would have exploded. 18 minutes isn't enough time to deplane, clean, fuel, and board unless you're throwing passengers out the cargo door. New Russell just nodded. Ambitious timeline, Madison. Very innovative. Brady beamed. See, I told you he'd get with the program. Program. My program was currently focused on controlled demolition. Over the years, I'd written about 3,000 lines of custom code to keep FlightOps Pro functional. These weren't official updates. IT didn't even know half of them existed. They were patches, workarounds, digital duct tape that held everything together. Example, when the crew scheduling system crashed every Thursday, because it was programmed by someone who apparently hated Thursdays, my script automatically pulled backup data from payroll so we didn't lose pilot assignments. Without that script, the system displayed error 404, pilot not found, and planes sat on the tarmac until someone manually called 250 pilots. I didn't delete the scripts. That would be sabotage, and I'm not a criminal. I'm a professional. Instead, I consolidated them, moved all my custom protocols into a single directory on the server. My directory tied to my employee credentials. The logic was sound. These were my personal productivity tools. If I was employed, they ran. If not, well, access gets revoked. Standard security protocol. I spent 3 days doing this, working late into the night. Brady stopped by once, seeing me hunched over code. Burning the midnight oil. Love the dedication, he said. Just documenting everything for the transition, I replied. Wasn't even lying. Perfect. We're bringing in consultants next week to map the workflow. They're going to love what they find, I muttered. What's that? I said I hope they're thorough. By Thursday, the trap was set. My custom code was now the load-bearing wall of the entire operation, and the detonator was my employment status. But I needed one more thing: documentation. I dug up an old compliance memo from 2013 about intellectual property of employee-created tools. It basically said any code written by employees for personal workflow optimization remained their responsibility unless formally transferred to IT through a 60-day review process. I printed it out, signed it, and buried it in a stack of new hire paperwork. Nobody reads that stuff anyway. It got filed in the basement of bureaucracy where all important documents go to die. Friday afternoon, the email came. Meeting, HR, and strategy, 3:00 p.m. No subject line, no agenda, just the digital equivalent of a death sentence. I knew what it was. I looked around the OCC one last time, at the flickering screens, the gray carpet, Danny wiping mustard off his shirt. I loved this chaos, this controlled madness, but you can't save a house when the owners are pouring gasoline on it and handing out matches. I opened my desk drawer, took out my personal items. A photo of Sarah and our daughter Emma at her high school graduation, my backup reading glasses, a bottle of Advil that had seen more action than a war correspondent. Danny, I said, standing up. Yeah, boss? If the routing server asks for level 5 authentication tonight, don't force it. Let it cycle. Danny looked confused. Okay. You going somewhere? Just a meeting, I said. Hold the fort. Always do. The HR office smelled like fear and cheap air freshener. Madison sat behind the desk like she was judging a talent contest. Brady slouched next to her, probably live-streaming this to his followers. In the corner sat Patricia from HR, looking like she wanted to be literally anywhere else, maybe diving into an active volcano. Have a seat, Russell, Madison said, gesturing to a chair positioned lower than theirs. Classic power move. I'll stand. My back acts up around nonsense. Madison's jaw tightened. Let's make this quick. We've been reviewing the structural needs of operations, and frankly, your traditional approach doesn't align with our agile, forward-thinking vision. Agile, I repeated. That the word for firing the only guy who knows how the servers work? Brady pointed his phone at me. See? That negativity. It's toxic, Russell. We're building a culture here. I am the culture. I've been keeping your planes in the air since you were learning to tie your shoes. You're terminated, Madison said, her voice flat. Effective immediately for insubordination and failure to adapt to company protocols. Patricia slid a folder across the desk. Standard severance package, 3 weeks pay, NDA. Sign now and we won't contest unemployment. 3 weeks. 14 years of missed holidays, of sleeping in the office during blizzards, of being the guy who answered the phone at 3 a.m. when something went wrong. They offered me 3 weeks. I didn't look at the folder. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my ID badge. The plastic was cracked, the lanyard frayed. It showed my face from 6 years ago, looking optimistic. I didn't recognize that guy anymore. I tossed the badge on the desk. It landed with a plastic snap right on Brady's iPhone screen. Keep your money, I said. I'm not signing anything, because if I sign that NDA, I can't consult, and you're going to need a consultant very, very soon. Madison laughed. We can run this place without you. We have the dashboard. We have the data. I looked at her, then at Brady, still filming everything for his social media. Madison, you have a dashboard that shows data I curate. You have a system running on logic I wrote. You think you bought a self-driving car, but you just bought a manual transmission and fired the driver while doing 80 on the highway. I turned toward the door. Wait, Brady said, lowering his phone. You need to hand over your passwords. They're in my desk drawer, I lied. Written on sticky notes, just like you kids like them. I opened the door. The hallway air felt cleaner. Oh, and Madison? The server does a cache refresh every 4 hours. Next one's at 3:30. That's 15 minutes. When it refreshes, it looks for active user authentication to rebuild the bridge to the mainframe. If it doesn't find one, I shrugged. Well, it gets confused. We have administrative access, Madison snapped. Tell your dad I said good luck. I walked to the elevator, pressed the button, and descended. As the doors closed, I pulled out my phone and opened the admin app. Status: connected. User: Russell Garrett. Action: log out. A warning popped up. Logging out will terminate all active session scripts. Continue? My thumb hovered over the screen. I thought about the 3-week severance. I thought about Brady's TikTok videos. I thought about Howard Pierce letting his kids play God with people's livelihoods. I pressed yes. Status: disconnected. I walked out into the afternoon sunshine. The air smelled like jet fuel and freedom. There's a bar called the Departure Lounge about a mile from the airport. It's where airline people go to forget their shifts, pilots who've timed out, flight attendants with sore feet, ground crew who just need to decompress. I walked in at 3:15. Early day, Russell? Asked Pete, the bartender. Permanent vacation, Pete. Give me a bourbon. The good stuff. Pete poured. I raised the glass to the TV showing departures at LaGuardia. Everything still looked normal. 3:30 p.m. Cache refresh time. Somewhere in the server room, lines of code were reaching out for my digital handshake, and finding nothing but air. In my mind, I could see the OCC. Danny would be finishing his afternoon snack. The new dashboard would be showing green lights across the board. Then the first glitch would happen. Maybe Flight 412 to Miami would suddenly show a departure time of null. Danny would frown, tap his keyboard. Hey, Jason. Miami flight just lost its departure slot. Probably just a sensor, Jason would say, not looking up from his phone. Refresh it. Danny would refresh. The system would look for my backup script to reload the data. Access denied. My phone started lighting up at 3:45. Flight 284 to Boston changed from on-time to delayed. Then Flight 156 to Seattle. Then Flight 398 to Denver. Here we go, I whispered, taking another sip. Inside the OCC, the pretty dashboard would be having a seizure. Without clean data, those beautiful visualizations Madison loved so much would look like a seismograph during an earthquake. My phone buzzed. Text from Danny. Russell, what's happening? System locked us out of gate assignments. 2 planes taxiing to the same gate, pilots losing their minds. I didn't reply. I ordered wings and watched the show. By 4:30, the evening rush was in full meltdown. Without routing logic, the system reverted to factory default settings from 1999. It didn't know about the terminal renovations, the runway construction, or basic geography. It started assigning planes to gates that existed only in digital space. The TV switched to breaking news. Massive delays at LaGuardia and JFK as regional airline experiences, system-wide failure. I raised my bourbon to the screen. My phone rang. Madison's number. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. And again. Text from Brady. This is really unprofessional. People are suffering. I replied, try using that agile methodology to fly planes. Then I blocked him. The big call came at 6 p.m. Howard Pierce, Sr. I stared at the phone. Howard deserved respect. He built this company from nothing, but he also stepped aside and let his spoiled kids treat me like yesterday's garbage. 3 rings. I answered, Russell. Howard's voice sounded older than his 78 years. It's a nightmare down here. I noticed. News says you're breaking records for cancellations. Cut the crap, Russell. The kids screwed up. I know it. You know it. But you're hurting innocent people. I didn't hurt anyone, sir. I was fired. I left. The system did exactly what it was designed to do. Protect security integrity. He grunted. Smart. Look, come back tonight. I'll fire Madison and Brady. Name your price. Just get these planes moving. This was it. The victory lap. I could walk back in there, be the hero, watch Madison cry in the parking lot. It was tempting as hell. But then I thought about the last 2 weeks. The disrespect. The legacy-thinking comments. If I went back, nothing would change. Howard would retire, Madison would inherit everything, and I'd be the janitor cleaning up messes until I dropped dead. I can't do that, sir. Name your number. 150K, 200K. It's not about money. It's about liability. If I come back now and fix this, I'm admitting I sabotaged it. Lawyers would have a field day. I'll sign a waiver. No, I said firmly. The bridge is burned, Howard. You let them light the match. Russell, please. I'm bleeding money. You should have thought about that before you replaced your chief engineer with a couple of social media influencers. I hung up. Saturday morning, I slept until 9 a.m. First time in years. Made real coffee from actual beans, not the powdered despair we had at work. Sat on my porch and opened LinkedIn. Changed my status to independent aviation systems consultant. Within 2 hours, I had 15 messages. One stood out. Oliver Rodriguez, VP of Operations at Aero Connect, our biggest competitor. Russell, saw the news. Lunch today? We met at a steakhouse. Oliver brought a contract. 6-figure consulting fee, work from home, set my own schedule. One condition, I said, full autonomy. If I say something needs fixing, it gets fixed. Done. 3 months later, Skylink was sold for parts. Madison started a podcast about workplace resilience. I listened to one episode, mostly ads for life coaching. Me? I work from home now, make more in 3 months than I used to make in a year. Sarah and I took Emma to Europe for graduation. First real vacation in 15 years. Sometimes I think about the OCC, the chaos, the adrenaline of keeping everything from falling apart. But then I remember, respect is earned, competence has value, and sometimes the best revenge is just being better at your job somewhere else.